Chapter 1. This week's Chapter 1 is Pour Over Predicament. Chapter 1. The beehive buzzed with harmonious clatter of the typical morning. Clinking cups, the hissing of an espresso machine, and the shop's rustic charm promised a comforting start to the day. The air was rich with the aroma of blended coffees and freshly baked pies, a sensory simulation of home that only the beehive could deliver. I was standing behind the counter putting the finishing touches on a latte when the meticulous care with our regular customers had come to adorn when the door flew open. In walked Loretta Beebe, looking like she just stepped out of a tanny bed and into the Southern Belle costume contest. She was waving an envelope above her head like a flag of victory. Here it is, y'all. Loretta's voice stretched each word into its own little song, the kind that told you that she was from the South and nowhere else. Her bracelets jangled, her pearls matched her bright white teeth, and she had the short black hair that Aunt Maxie swore came from a box you could grab from the shelf at the Piggly Wiggly. Bunny Bowowski, the ever pragmatist, barely looked up from her espresso machine, her hands a blur of efficiency. If the results aren't what she wants, we just might have to put her out of her misery right here, she muttered, the whirl of the machine muffling her words to everyone but me. Aunt Maxie perched like a regal figure by the chalkboard menus. Her eyes twinkled with mischief. She couldn't resist getting a jab in right before she took a bite of this week's featured breakfast casserole. Wouldn't that be a shame, she said, her sarcasm as thick as the hairspray holding up her gravity-defying hairdo. Loretta, bless her heart, didn't even notice. She was too caught up in her own drama. Oh, Loretta, what on earth are you hem-hawing around about? Bunny called out, drying her hands with the bar towel and nudging me to keep the line moving. I chuckled, playing along. Who works for who around here? I asked. It was a dance we all knew, with Bunny's unwavering dedication making her the heart of our operation. The envelope held the results of Loretta's efforts over the past 6 months and the promise of recognition for Honey Spring. She poured her heart into transforming our town into a bastion of Southern hospitality, hoping to see it named among America's best small towns. The moment of truth had arrived. The clatter of coffee cups paused, the air stilled, and all eyes in the beehive fixed on Loretta as she ripped open the envelope theatrically. For a moment, she was the very picture of drama, holding the letter close to her lips, silently traced the words, her audience captivated by the suspense. And slowly, deliberately, she lowered the paper, her mouth hanging open in an exasperated gasp of surprise, as if the words on the page had rendered her speechless. Bunny, ever the Southern wit, leaned over the counter, her eyes twinkling with mirth. Loretta, honey, close your mouth. You're going to catch flies, she drawled, her voice dripping with the warm, sassy charm that seemed to be coming so naturally to the ladies of Honey Springs. We did it! Honey Springs is officially one of the best small towns in America, she crowed. I felt a swell of hometown pride so strong it almost made me forget the coffee I was pouring. We did it! Honey Springs is on the map, she exclaimed, her voice ringing with pride. They're sending a journalist to experience everything. She twirled, she threw her head back and held the letter to her chest before she gestured out the window. The lake views, our gourmet teas, the casseroles at Roxy starts at dawn, and the charm that only our small town can offer, Loretta squealed. The Beehive Coffee Shop erupted into a round of applause and cheers and laughter. This moment was a victory for Loretta, for the Beehive, and for Honey Springs. Loretta's excitement was contagious, and everyone in the Beehive was cheering and clapping, but I needed to know something important. I leaned over the counter and asked, Loretta, when is the journalist coming? Because we need to get the Beehive all spruced up. Loretta quickly looked back at the letter. Her eyes moved quickly as she searched for the answers. Suddenly they widened. Today, she exclaimed, her voice rising to a near scream in her excitement. She started listing off everything she needed to do, like calling the mayor, the sheriff, and everyone else who needed to know. And just like that, she was out the door, a whirlwind of energy, leaving the rest of us in the shop buzzing with anticipation and a little bit of panic. Today, I silently looked out into the boardwalk. My gaze shifted across the serene, expansive lake of Lake Honey Springs to the small wooden island that was so much prettier in the spring, summer, or fall. But winter? The revelation that the journalist was coming today sent a ripple of urgency through me. In the warmer months, the view was postcard perfect, but now in the grip of winter, the charm seemed to hibernate, along with the leaves and the vibrant Kentucky bluegrass. The little island, usually a lush retreat that held a spa and a real bee farm, now looked bare and somewhat forlorn. "What are you thinking?" Axie asked, pulled me back from my reverie. I glanced around the beehive, taking in the cozy familiarity of all that with a critical eye. Well, I'm thinking we're looking a little bit, well, bland right now, I admitted, shrugging as I moved toward the coffee bar. The morning rush was winding down, but the aftermath was evident. I haven't had a chance to tidy up the self service bar where the customers could grab a quick cup without waiting in line. The bar, with its 6 industrial thermoses filled with various coffee blends, including the decaf, usually looked inviting, but now it all seemed to lack a little sparkle. As I started cleaning, I couldn't help but notice the salty patches on the floor, remnants of our snowy customer tracks that were laid inside. The patches of snow were a stark reminder of the winter outside. A season, while beautiful in its own right, had stripped Honey Springs of its vibrant, picturesque charm. And the bean hive, normally a warmth and cheer haven, now reflected the drabness of the season. I pondered over what could be done to spruce up the place, considering the leafless trees, the dormant grass outside, and but the challenge was to bring some of the lost vibrancy back inside and to transform the beehive into a welcoming oasis that would captivate our soon to arrive guest, despite the bleak winter. It was time to get creative, to infuse some life and color back into our beloved coffee shop, making sure it would showcase the best of Honey Springs under a blanket of snow. But decorating would have to wait because Louise Carlton, she came sweeping through the door, a chilly air and poofs of snow behind her. And I smiled as I watched her warm and compassionate heart and the promises of a new furry guest. She was dressed in her signature style, a long sleeve denim dress that fluttered just above her knees, adorned with charming ruffled sleeve. Her silver bob with blunt bangs framed her face, completing her outfit and her silver accessories perfectly. And as she approached, I could see she was carrying a small folder, and more importantly, a leash that wiggled and jiggled excitement at the other end. At the end of that leash walked a surprisingly cute little beagle mix with hopeful eyes and a wagging tail. The dog's coat was a patchwork of brown and black and white, and his ears flopped with each enthusiastic step. "Roxy, meet Bandit," Louise said with a smile and handed me the leash. "He's a 2-year-old beagle mix, fully vaccinated, house trained, and just the sweetest thing, and people are going to love him. He's great with kids, and he has a thing for squeaky toys." I took the folder from her and ripped it open with a glance over Bandit's record. "He's adorable," I remarked, kneeling down and giving Bandit a gentle scratch behind his ear. His response was soft, appreciative bark, and his tail was a blur of motion. Louise's eyes lit up with hope and gratitude. "We thought he would be perfect for the coffee shop. He's friendly, not too big, and I have a feeling he'll win someone's heart in no time." My moment alone with Bandit was brief. Pepper, my beloved schnauzer and a proud alumnus of the Pet Palace, seemed to have a sixth sense for things. He bounded over from his cozy spot in front of the shop's fireplace, his curiosity piqued by our new visitor. To Pepper, this regular encounter was more than just an adoptive initiative. It was a weekly play date, a chance to meet new friends. The collaboration between the Beanhive Coffee Shop and the Pet Palace had become a cherished part of our routine. Louise kept thermoses of my special blend coffee at the Pet Palace, a gesture that helped promote my small business, and in return, I hosted a furry guest from the Pet Palace every week, a practice that had been proven highly successful. Every animal that we had featured here got a forever home. And I watched Pepper and Bandit cautiously sniff each other and begin of a friendship forming between them. But it was just so heartwarming to see, and it reminded me and reinforced in me the belief in my coffee shop's partnership with Louise at the Pet Palace. Not only did it bring joy to the customers of the Beanhive, but it also gave these animals a much needed spotlight, increasing their chances of finding a loving home. And as I stood there watching the two dogs begin to play, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This little corner of Honey Springs, with its charming coffee shop and community driven initiative, was more than just a place of business. It was a hub of warmth and compassion, a place where coffee, community, and canines came together in perfect harmony. Did you hear the news? I asked Louise, pen in hand, as I signed off on the paperwork for Bandit, a necessary formality in our weekly adoption routine. Louise looked up, a hint of apprehension in her eyes. What news? She asked. I couldn't suppress the grin that spread across my face. Honey Spring has been picked as one of the best small towns in America, I announced with pride and excitement, slipping the folder neatly beside the cash register. It was important to keep the adoption paperwork handy for any potential new pet parents. Louise's hand flew to her chest, her expression a mix of surprise and delight. You've got to be kidding me, she exclaimed. Well, good for Loretta. Aunt Maxie, always a source of playful jabs, chimed in from across the counter. Don't you mean Loretta? She snorted with a twinkle in her eye, betraying her amusement. Imagine the scene of the Southern Women's Club meeting tonight, she said. I perked up at the mention of the meeting. What meeting? I asked. Well, we have our Southern Women's Club meeting tonight, Louise explained, her tone indicating the importance of the event. Aunt Maxie nodded. She and Loretta were both proud members of the exclusive group. The Southern Women's Club was an institution in Honey Spring, known for its select and prestige. I had been invited to a meeting once, just once. Apparently, I wasn't the type of member that they wanted. The single experience had been enough to give me a glimpse into the working of the club, a world of its own within our small town. The prospect of tonight's meeting, especially now with the big news about Honey Spring had gotten out, promised an evening of excitement and no doubt a fair amount of town gossip. I nodded, already imagining Bandit mingling with the customers, his gentle demeanor winning over even the most reserved patrons. It was a belief I held closely that showcasing these animals in a familiar communal space could spark the connection needed for adoption. Thanks, Louise, I said. I'm sure Bandit will be a hit here, and who knows, with the journalist coming today, he just might get some extra attention. I reached over to the counter and grabbed the jar of homemade animal treats, a special touch we offered proudly at the Bean Hive for our four-legged friends. He's already fitting in, I said with a laugh, watching as Pepper and Bandit eagerly trotted over to the sound of the jar opening. They knew what was coming and were more than ready for their treats. Louise watched with a smile, and then she turned back to me with an unexpected proposition. Why don't you come to the meeting tonight? She suggested. I chuckled. Imagine Loretta's reaction. Are you kidding? Loretta would have a fit. Her head might spin right off her shoulders, I replied, securing the lid back on the jar. I couldn't resist sneaking a few extra treats in my apron pocket for Bandit and Pepper later. But Louise had more up her sleeves. Well, I'm in charge for dessert tonight, and I want to hire you, not just for desserts, but for coffee too, and to serve it. Louise's eyes sparkled with mingled challenge and camaraderie. Besides, you're a lawyer and you have a good business sense. Who knew what this title for Honey Springs all about? And you can talk about it. She knew just how to tip me. Our conversation at Pet Palace, often peppered with tidbits about the Southern Women's Club, had given her a look into my curious nature. And the idea of catering for the club, especially on a night like tonight, was certainly intriguing. This meeting wasn't just about business. It was a chance to be a fly on the wall at one of the town's most exclusive gatherings. I pondered the offer, weighing the opportunity against Loretta's potential reaction. Serving the club would provide valuable insight and the kind of small town intel that was like gold in Honey Spring. And who knew? Maybe being there might stir up some inspiration for another mystery to brew at the Beehive. With a decisive nod, I agreed. All right, Louise, you've got yourself a deal. Dessert and coffee served by yours truly. It will definitely be a night to remember, that's for sure. As Louise turned to leave, a sudden flurry of movement caught my eye. Bandit, the lively little beagle, had noticed the door swing open and made a dash for it. He's a runner, Louise yelled, her voice tinged with panic as she hurried after him. In his excitement, Bandit weaved through the legs of customers holding a tea latte. The inevitable happened. The customer wobbled and the latte went flying. The liquid landed over a man who had just walked into the beehive. Louise reacted to catch Bandit before he could escape, and I grabbed a bunch of napkins and rushed over to the latte soaked newcomer. I am so sorry, I said, offering him the napkins and trying to help clean up the mess. Despite the unfortunate situation, the man took it in stride, accepting the napkins with a half smile. It's okay. Accidents happen, he said, sounding surprisingly calm. Something about him, his demeanor, the way he spoke, made me suspect he wasn't just any customer. You're not from around here, are you? I asked, a hunch forming in my mind. He chuckled, wiping the latte off his jacket. That obvious? I'm Ethan Harper, the journalist here to do the expose on Honey Springs. My heart sank. Ethan Harper, the journalist we had all been eagerly anticipating, had just received a very unconventional welcome to our town. Oh no, I said quietly, feeling a mix of shame and concern. Ethan Harper, however, just waved off my apologies with a friendly grin. Don't worry about it. If this is the most excitement I get in Honey Springs, I think I'll be fine. His gracious response did a little quill of my embarrassment. This was not just the first impression we'd hoped to leave on Ethan Harper, but it was certainly an unforgettable one. And now it was up to Honey Springs and me to turn this slightly chaotic beginning into a charming story for him to remember our town by. My goodness gracious, what in the world of mint juleps have you done, Roxanne Bloom? Loretta Beebe exclaimed, standing at the door with a look of utter disbelief painted across her face. Her flair for the dramatic was in full force. Her expression was exaggerated as a scene from the classic Southern play. You turned the beehive into a splash zone of a latte rodeo. Her words, though laced with shock, couldn't hide the embarrassment, upset tone lying underneath her voice. Loretta quickly made her way over to the journalist, her eyes fixed on Ethan Harper with an earnest plea. Now, Mr. Harper, please don't judge our sweet Honey Spring based on this little mishap, she implored, her hands clasped together in prayer. We're usually more welcome than warm lattes over strangers. She moved closer and her voice took on a desperate tone laced with Southern charm. And if you could, would you so kindly consider leaving this unconventional greeting out of your article? We'd hate for our town's first impression to be as anything but hospitable and charming place it truly is. She gave me the hard stink eye. Ethan, wiping the last remnants of coffee off his jacket, looked at Loretta with an amused smile. Don't worry, Mrs. Beebe. I've seen enough to know there's more to Honey Spring than an over enthusiastic dog and an accidental latte shower. I'm looking forward to discovering all the charms this town has to offer. Loretta let out a relieved sigh, her posture relaxing slightly, and though her eyes still held a hint of worry. Well, thank you, Mr. Harper. We'll see. You'll see that Honey Springs is a gem of a place. Just wait until you've had a taste of our Southern hospitality, minus the spills, of course. Her attempt to lighten the mood brought a few chuckles from other customers, easing the tension in the air. And why don't we come back when it's not so, she searched for the word, chaotic. He smiled and agreed as she slipped her hand in the crook of his arm, but not before he gave me a quick nod, a silent message that not all was lost on our visiting journalist. Despite the rocky start, there was still hope that Honey Springs would charm Ethan Harper just as it had charmed so many others. Chapter 1, Pour Over Predicament.